Yeah, under your.
All right, welcome to the Daily Dirt with Dustin Diggs. I'm here with Ellie. Ellie brought a friend from high school, right? You went to high school?
I did. I did go to high school. Thank God.
Thank God.
I'm not a dropout.
I figured you went to high school. You seem pretty smart enough that you went to high school. Introduce your guest today.
This is Mr. Michael Winningham, born and bred independent filmmaker who now currently resides in L.A. And has had a chance to stop by as he's kind of relocating and whatnot. A little transitional period for himself and his personal life and moving back to the Midwest. And so he had a chance, despite all the appointments and stuff he had to keep and people he needed to see because he came back after the pandemic and all that has lessened up a little bit. I had a chance to stop by today, and it's just an absolute phenomenal inspiration as far as like people who really can dream big and create big and can inspire other people here. And he doesn't think he's a big success story, but he's really a creative individual.
I've heard of your name before. So before you moved out to LA, you did you make independent films here in St. Louis before you moved out?
I did. I was making movies back in like 98, from about 98, 99 until about 2006. I was out here doing stuff.
Yeah,
and then I kind of took a break and then moved out to LA in 2013 and been doing stuff out there.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I must have seen some stuff that you did like when I was growing up. I was like in my 20s during that time. So I must have seen your name at the St. Louis Film Festival. Yeah.
I'm his Midwest promoter, and I run things through the Artists United Network, so you could have seen it that way too. You could have said Carjack.
Yeah, maybe. So you grew up here in St. Louis. You made films. You probably worked with a lot of filmmakers that are probably still around here in St. Louis, I would think.
A number of people, a few.
And my question is, because I never had the balls or the stones to do it, but what was that decision that made you want to move to LA?
Oh, well, I wanted to go for forever. Like, I've wanted to go to LA since I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. I've always dreamed of going out to LA and making movies. And so my goal was to move out when I graduated high school, go to film school out in LA and all that stuff. But things didn't work out that way. I got sidetracked with other stuff. And so finally, around 2011 or so, I set my sights on finally moving out there. And then by 2013, it actually worked out that way that I could relocate and really try to. Well, it really came down to I entered the St. Louis Film Festival in 2012. They had this. It was like in conjunction with a thing called Script Mechanics, but it was a screenplay competition attached to the St. Louis Film Festival.
Yeah,
and so I don't know if they just did it that one year, but like they did it that year. And I entered it. My girlfriend at the time was now my wife, but she convinced me I should really put this screenplay into the competition. You know, it's a zombie movie. And I was like, well, it's a zombie movie. I don't really think I'm going to win a film festival screenplay competition with a zombie movie. But she's like, just do it, try it out. So I put my film, zombie film in there and ended up winning that competition. And with it, that put me in touch. Like one of the things when you won the contest was there was a film pitch expert in LA, a guy named Ken Rottkop, who kind of like had pitch festivals where you could go and pitch to executives and all these things.
Wow.
And so because I won, I was in contact with him. And so I flew out to LA, met him, did this pitch fest thing, got a lot of interest from a lot of people in Hollywood.
How does that work? So is it like a convention where people like you are all like going through a room, waiting in line?
It's smaller than the convention. You're talking about, it's about 10 to 15 writers.
Okay.
And then you have about 20 or 30 representatives. Like I said, there's some of them are creative executives, some of them are development executives, some are literary agents. It's like a smattering of people just looking for talent kind of a thing. And so it's kind of like a speed date. They all have like their own tables set up throughout the space, and you sit down and you have a handful of minutes, 5 minutes or something to like pitch your story to them, and they can ask some questions and you kind of go back and forth. And then after you do that, they all go home and then send like requests. Like they tell the people who run it, like, I wanted to see this screenplay, and this screenplay. And so that's what that is.
So you went and sat down at a table. Let's just pretend it is, and you have to do the pitch under 5 minutes. So
yeah, usually your pitch is only like 60 seconds or something. Like
60
you want it to
seconds.
be pretty short because like they get bored. You know, they hear stuff all the time, so you have to like try to get people's attention real fast.
right. I mean, I'm sure like within the first 15 seconds, you know that you hooked this guy, you did not hook this guy, right? Or hooked this girl.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about 15 seconds, but it's you can kind of tell if somebody's actually listening to you or if they're just kind of waiting for you to be done.
Right. I've been there a lot in my life with that kind of scenario. Well, can you give us a pitch in like 60 seconds of like the zombie movie or maybe just
it's been so long since I pitched anything. I suck at it. I say that I hate pitching because it's very like, I don't know, you feel like you're kind of a little trick. You're just trying to like somehow impress these people, which is not really my thing. But I will say at that pitch fest, I had the most requests for my screenplay. Movie never got made, so it's not like it went anywhere. But
remember, he's not creative at all.
Well, it's just like I'm saying, like standing there and finding a way. The thing is to tell anybody a story in like 60 seconds or 2 minutes and make it sound compelling enough that people want to put hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars into it. Right. It's a hard.
I wouldn't even know how to start. Like in a world, like it's like how do you even start? Like how do you even start it? I mean, I don't even know how would you do a pitch for STL Dead in 60 seconds. Let's see if you can. See, it's hard. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Well, to be fair,
I'll tell you, it's a 10-part series like Creep Show, but it is short films, all independent short films. None of them have a thing to do with each other, and it's all run by the same cast and crew, like a normal Saturday Night Live setup for their cast. And it's all based here and filmed here in St. Louis. There you go. Boom.
That's not a bad pitch for on the fly.
You got it. You got the approval. You got the approval.
And all of them will be entered in the film festival individually
But,
and as a web series.
I will say most people, most writers, directors, whoever's trying to pitch a project will practice it and get it to like you basically run through it over and over and over again. And you memorize it almost like a little monologue because you don't want to like get caught. You don't want to get like tripped up while you're doing it. You have to be like, and you also have to sell it. So it's kind of like you do kind of almost pitch it like a commercial. You know, you're trying to be exciting and trying to be like captivating while you're pitching. You don't just be like, yeah, it's a movie about some zombies in the woods. Like nobody cares.
No, this is special. Yeah, I'd be like, no, my stuff is like straight up special horror effects, visual arts, animation, digital stuff of all the best jack of the all trade crafts rolled into one STL homegrown based independent version. Motherfuckers.
End it with the motherfuckers. That's how you. That's
when you
very
know
professional.
that they're definitely on board with you. If you can say the word motherfuckers, well, they're like, right, $10 million right now.
Such a hard profession because it's like I like to be creative. I can create stuff, but then it's like if I want to be a filmmaker, I got to be good at business. I got to be good at like sales, like because with this pitch, I mean, you got these people that pitch. You probably have to learn some really good sales pitch, So it takes a lot to be a filmmaker. If you're creative, it might not just be enough. You have to be able to do all those other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you reach a certain point, you can kind of fall back on being more of like your specific thing. Like if you're just a creative person, then you can be like, well, I'm just a creative person. I don't need to do all that stuff.
Right.
But when you're trying to make it, you do have to wear a lot of hats. You have to be able to do all that stuff because nobody else is like pitching you. Like, you don't have producers who are going to go do that for you, and you're not going to, or you're not going to have a manager who's going to go out and find you the work and sell you to everybody. So,
and you have more creative control over every individual department.
Yeah, that's true too.
And it cuts your costs.
So this pitch thing, did you meet the other writers? Were you guys actually talking to each other before you go to these pitches?
Yeah.
How was that working with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I actually there was another St. Louisan who had moved out to LA briefly, but like shortly before, who I ran into there, which was interesting.
Who'd you run into?
His name was Caleb. I don't remember his last name right now.
Yeah,
but he was somebody I actually, so when I did move to films, I didn't go to LA and go to film school right after high school. I ended up going to community college up at Merrimack, and I took all the film classes there because that was the community college that had the film department. Like
shout out
others.
Purdue on Purcell out there in Merrimack. What's up, guys?
Yeah. So I went to Merrimack, and so it turns out he was an acting student because I also did a lot of theater at Merrimack, and me and him had classes together. I didn't remember him at first, but then when he started talking to him, I was like, oh, that's right. Cool. Yeah, I remember you. So it was just a strange coincidence that like 10 years later we ran into each other in LA for this pitch thing.
I'm going to hijack you for a minute. So let's get into the nuts and bolts and not the bullshit. This is what's really cool about him. Let me show you how it really shines. So tell us, we were talking about all these independent film festivals and these nominations and all this. Tell us where you are right now with this movie, new movie you got that's getting ready to be released to the public. At some point, after you keep hitting the circuits and keep getting more and more nominations, how many different nominations and film festivals have you been involved in since it was leashed out to
Well,
the festivals?
Yeah, Carjack is my short film, and it got. I started doing festival submissions last summer.
So you got Standalone.
Yeah, this is actually. So I just got into the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase.
Whoa, yeah.
Which is a St. Louis specific filmmaking film festival. So basically, you have to be a St. Louisan or have close ties to St. Louis. And even though I'm an expat, I've moved out to California. Like I still am a St. Louis filmmaker in a lot of respects. So I made it in that, and that was my 9th film festival for the short film. So I'm hoping to get to at least 10. We'll see coming up.
What else ones have you been in? You've been in Standalone.
There was
LA.
There was a Standalone film festival. That was an online one. There was the Dark Story Film Festival, in which I actually won a Best Director and a Best Editing award for.
Very cool.
And then there was the Great Lakes International Film Festival out of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Very cool.
Which I was nominated for Best Short in that one. Let's see. There was the Liftoff Film Festival, which is kind of a series of global film festivals. They're like a network.
Wait, so I'm confused because I'm trying to do a timeline for the audience here, and she jumped ahead to your stuff here. So,
Yeah.
So is this stuff that you were making in L.A.?
This is the last short film I made in L.A. back in. I actually filmed it. We produced it in February of 2017, right before my firstborn was born, right before her birthday in March. But we made it in February of 2017, and it had a rocky road of getting through post-production. There was a lot of problems, but we finished the editing and everything and had it ready to be submitted in February of 2020. So it took 3 years to get it finished. And then I started sending it out last summer during the pandemic, and have, like I said, made it in the last little less than a year, like the last 10 months, I've made it into 9 film festivals.
Oh, wow.
And the latest one being the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase. But then there's one out of Green Bay called the MLC Awards, which I was nominated. The film was nominated for 4 different awards, including Best Actress, and the villain got a nomination for being a memorable mobster character, I think is what the category was. And then Best Short and Best Mobster Short, basically. And I did win, or the film won for the Best Mobster flavored film. And then the other 3 categories, we were the runner-up in all those. So top 2 in all 4 categories, which was pretty great.
And tell Matt, if you get a nomination out of the St. Louis Filmmakers Showcase, what happens next for you in the St. Louis area? What do you get to be a part of?
Then I would be in the St. Louis International Film Festival.
And if you get that, what does that guarantee you to go to the next spot? If you can get in the International Film Festival, you could almost be eligible for a nomination, I believe, at do they even do like all the the best film of the year, and everybody do they do that?
I don't know.
Did they stop doing that this year?
I'm not sure if the
Did you
International
hear that
Film
about
Festival does that. I'm just not sure.
Ours does.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it does. It guarantees you a spot there. Yep.
Yeah,
it sure does.
And I don't know if the St. Louis International Film Festival is a Academy Award or Golden Globes qualifying festival or anything. There's certain festivals that
Golden Globes qualifier.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what the St. Louis St. Louis Film Festival's.
No, I'm telling you, that's what they are.
Okay.
Oh no, they are. Yeah, he's definitely got the talent on it. Do you want to see the short film teaser that?
Yeah, I was.
That people are dying to wonder what's wrong with the screen.
It's good here. I gotta turn up here. Oh man. Suspense.
That's the idea.
And that was filmed in L.A.?
Yeah, that was filmed in L.A. In the parking garage of my apartment, actually, in my car. Yeah. But that was L.A.
I bet you when you're in L.A., there's just you go to the grocery store and there's just people filming all over the place, right?
There is.
Yeah.
There is definitely that. There's film. Well, and also where you live. Like, it depends on where you live in L.A. And we lived in the Burbank, Glendale area, which is where all the studios are, like where Warner Brothers and DreamWorks and Disney and all that. They're like literally like the neighbors of, your neighbors. And so like, there were always, you'd just be driving down the street and like, oh, can't go down this street today because it's closed and there's cranes and, hundreds of people, shooting stuff. So that was pretty commonplace.
So when you moved out there, you went through this pitch thing. It didn't work out, but you moved there. You got there 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was it easy to find work at the beginning? I'm sure it was difficult. I'm sure because there's 30,000 people a month headed to LA, right? What's the statistics on that? It's pretty high.
I don't know what the statistics are, but it is very high. Yeah, there's a million people trying to make it in LA for sure.
Yeah.
I just started doing what you do, Craigslist and different like places where you can try to find postings for jobs. They have a thing called I can't think of it, Central Casting, which is like for extra work. So I went and I went there and got hooked up with this extras casting, to be just in the background of movies and stuff. I did a lot of like, again, answering ads and such. And I think it probably was my first job I really got out there I worked on Big Brother, the reality show.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I answered an ad and came in and interviewed, and it was the woman doing the casting for it was actually from Iowa. And so she had this like whole Midwestern connection thing. And so I got in a strange thing, which I didn't know even existed in reality TV, but basically I got to be as if I was on the show. It was called a house PA, but like basically me and a number of people lived in the Big Brother house for a week and did all the things like we were on the show. And
cool.
They basically to warm up the camera crews because it's on 24/7. There's nobody you don't take breaks. You don't stop shooting.
And it's not scripted at all.
No, it's not scripted at all. So basically I lived as a contestant for like a week while all the crews got comfortable and learned how to like anticipate people and capture everything they needed to capture.
And they'd rotate the crews in every 8 hours? There'd be a new
I'm
crew?
not sure. I'm assuming it was like every 10 or 12 hours.
Yeah,
That's usually in Hollywood. Most day jobs are 10 to 12 hours is what you're shooting. But yeah, I don't know what the rotations like. We didn't really talk or interact with the crew. Like we just were in the house, like I said, locked up. Basically.
So if you're like, we're talking to someone else, you can almost guarantee that there's a camera zooming in on.
Yeah, it's actually super surreal. I mean, I have a whole different view of reality TV after doing it because, once you realize that literally they had cameras. Everywhere. I mean, they were in the wall, so you can't see them. They're just like all these like hidden, two-way mirrors and like black strips, and the cameras are behind them. And like when we walked into the house, you could see all the tracks and stuff. Like you could see where the cameras were. But there were cameras even in the bathroom. Literally the only place you could go that you weren't being filmed is in like a bathroom stall. And there was just one of them. Right. But they had microphones in there. And so they could hear you, but they couldn't physically film you like using their bathroom.
Man,
but the showers had cameras, everything had cameras.
You had bad dinner that night. Holy shit.
And
so you get to use the confession booth yourself?
Yeah, you had to do that multiple times a day after everything, basically. They'd call you in there. It was weird, just a big booming like God voice that would just like tell you people, I'd be like, so-and-so, come here and do this. And you're like, all right.
Confess yourself.
Like the Truman Show?
Yeah, it's weird.
Man,
but the biggest thing is once you realize that everything that you're doing is being recorded, like there's no privacy, like everyone's inhibitions and like guards drop, and like you just tell people, like you don't even know these people, but you just start like talking about everything, and like you don't really have concerns. I don't know, it's weird. It's I don't know if it's like a weird because you're trapped in this space and you have no privacy, but like everyone just talked about everything. Like you become super close to people in record time. So when you see in reality TV, like somebody gets sent home after like the first episode and everybody's crying about it, like I used to watch that and be like, that's weird. Like, why are they all sad? But being in that experience, it's like, no, seriously, like somebody goes home on the second day, you just start crying.
Most of that stuff is actually genuine.
Yeah, it's real. Like you really become bonded in like no time because you also have no distractions. Like you can't watch TV, you can't be on your phone, you can't Like they take everything away from you, so you just
I've seen
talk.
people with their phones and stuff before on that.
No, they're not supposed to. Not on Big Brother. At least that's what I mean, this is 2013, so they might have changed things. But like, you could do nothing but talk to each other, and you just start like, confessing all kinds of stuff, or having these deep conversations.
So tell us, Mike, what were one of your confessions?
Oh, I don't. I don't even know what I talked about exactly back then, but it was definitely an experience, and like I said, it changed my view of reality TV. Now I don't think people are being silly when I see like some of the over emotional things that happen. I'm like, well, no, I felt that stuff. Like I remember by like I think it was the 4th day, because you have to vote, right, and send people home.
Right.
And like I had to vote for somebody I didn't want to send home, and so like I was crying and everybody was crying, and it was bizarre. It's bizarre how emotionally attached to people you get in those situations and those. Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's really weird.
It's like a backwards thinking. You would think you'd see your privacy's being taken from you. Like, I'm not saying shit. It's like a penitentiary style. Lock them.
But I think you at least for me, I guess I feel like you realize that there's no way of winning. Like there's no way to not be like, it's like you don't really want to just sit there in silence in the corner by yourself for a week. And I mean, if you're on the actual show, you're in there for months potentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just, you just kind of, like I said, you drop your guard real fast.
Yeah, your persona or whatever you want to put out there at the beginning. I'm sure, like after a few days, you're just yourself. So, that's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, and I will say, so it's not scripted, but there is some coaching, I would argue, in some of that stuff. Like like you were talking about the confession booth, and so like when you go in there, they ask you questions. You're basically talking to like a mirror, roughly, and there's a voice that asks you questions and tells you things. And so like they have narratives, like they create, like any story, you need a story, you need a through line. And so they kind of they take who you are and find kind of a characteristic that they want to play up about you. And so that's how they
like
edit
the
it.
party girl
or whatever.
The slutty guy or whatever.
So they're going to edit and they're going to showcase different things to continue that idea, right? So then when you're in the confession thing and they're asking you like, okay, today when this happened, what'd you feel? And you tell them.
Right.
If it's not what they want you to say,
uh-oh,
they'll be, like they basically just keep asking, and they'll be like, "Well, did you think it was like this?" And like they won't make you say it. They just highly encourage you sometimes to give it certain like flavor. I guess you'd say.
Right. Because we're looking for those edits.
Yeah. So like for me, they knew I was a board gamer. Like I'm big into gaming, and so they decided I was going to be like this game master. And so everything I learned to just kind of go with it. Like they would always be like, "So would you say like they were a pawn to your blah, blah, blah?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I guess so." I would repeat it in a similar way so that they could keep that idea that like I was this big, strategist playing a game with everybody in the house. It was interesting.
By the way, there's an awesome board game convention coming to St. Charles next month.
You talking about Geekway?
Oh, man, right?
Yeah, I actually know the guys who run that.
Man, I'm all over that shit. I can't wait to go.
Geekway is a great con. It's a great gaming convention.
Right. So hopefully you get to go. Right.
Yeah, it'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I will, but I hope so. I've been to 2 other Geekways when I was in town over summers.
They have the most unique, we're not talking about just any kind of board games, the most unique crafted board games that you may never get to see sold ever again. I mean, they're by private people like me, you, and him. We come up with a board game, we market it, we do all that stuff. We can go there and sell it. Yeah, and it's cool. So cool.
But also, I mean, that blew up. I mean, they started that years ago, 10, 15 years ago. I guess 15 years or something like that. And it went from like they had small conventions at Westport and like the hotel ballroom and stuff, and now they're doing they do the St. Charles Convention Center, and they sell out every single year with all their tickets and stuff. It's blown up pretty big.
Check it out.
That's cool.
Highlight. So after Big Brother, what was the next step? So then you worked there. I did your central casting. You were
I did some little stuff here and there, and then I just kind of started meeting a few different filmmakers that I kind of clicked with, I guess. And I did a little bit of I worked on some other people's short films in different capacities.
Any shout outs you want to plug? Other films that you've worked on, other directors out in LA you want to say, hey, what's up, guys?
Well, I mean, there's quite a few. Like one of the guys I worked with, a guy named Waylon Bacon. And he does like kind of like Sam Raimi-ish quirky horror, early Peter Jackson kind of stuff. And he's a great guy, but he made a movie called The Ride, which was about, it's based on an actual incident that happened to him a long time, like years before. And it was kind of like a horror thriller comedy kind of a thing, but I worked on that as his art director. So I did all the like setting up of how it all takes place like in a white panel van. And so I decorated the entire van and the exterior interior and picked out like kind of the look of the film, I guess, on the inside of the vehicle. And that one's in the film festival circuit too. It's been floating around for a couple of years now. And I think he's just now going to release it to the public online, like in the next month or two, I think.
Did you work on the set or work with any filmmakers that, like, after you worked on it, maybe this was like like Spielberg or Lucas or somebody that actually like blew up? Like, have you?
No, nobody who like became hugely successful as a director or anything. I mean, I know I met a guy who was great, and he did a lot of like construction work and construction and set stuff. And he is now like, he's in the union now and he works on big budget movies, doing that. But at the time he was, still kind of coming up. And, another guy who worked camera, he was a camera operator. Now he does big stuff now too. But it's all, those jobs. It's not like they have jumped into like the limelight of being a big director or anything like that at this point.
Before we end, I do want to make sure he gets to talk about his actors and actresses that was a part of this wonderful short film. Do you want to talk about our leading guys?
Sure. Yeah.
Gentlemen that are a part of this.
Yeah. Carjack. I mean, I wrote and directed it, but Carjack is
like this young lady. Who is this young lady?
That is Eden McAllister.
Ooh. Tell us about Eden a little bit.
I mean, she's a super talented actress. When we were making Carjack, we did 3 12-hour days, I want to say, of like casting, like just having actors come in and read the parts and all that stuff. And Eden was she was a quick standout. She knocked it out of the park. She didn't, I barely had to coach her or, really direct her. She kind of got it intuitively when we were on set, and it was a super professional actress.
She's got an IMDb at the size of 270.
Yeah, they're all working actors in LA. None of them again are going to be our name actors yet, but I mean they all have the talent for this for sure.
Who's this young man we got looking at us?
That's Max Schlossberg. He, of all the people we saw, the character of Jack. So the movie's called Carjack because when basically a quick synopsis of the movie is
there's that 60 seconds. Sell it to us.
Two women in a car in a parking garage, are surprised when basically this strange man just climbs in the backseat of the car and holds them hostage. Holy
hell, where's your checkbook? Let's give him $2 billion.
And so he's demanding they return something to him, supposedly that they took. They say they don't know what he's talking about, and it's kind of I came up with it as kind of like a Hitchcocky kind of ode, like that kind of a feel. So it all just takes place inside this car. And so when I created the character of Jack, the idea was supposed to be this charismatic bad guy, but also you had to really be like feel for that the women were in danger. Like he wasn't just, a regular guy. And so when Max came in, he was the only actor that when he read some of the lines, like just he's reading it cold. He just came into the audition. When he read some of the lines, it was exactly the way I wrote them, like in my head, the way when I was putting it down, I was like, this is exactly how it was supposed to be said. And he just nailed it out of the park, or hit it out of the park. So yeah, Max is fantastic in it. And like I said, he was just nominated for a best, mobster award or whatever in that one of those recent festivals. But he's great.
Congrats to Mr. Max.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Let's talk about this young lady.
That's Brittany Wolf. She was another one that when we were casting, like, I mean, all 4 of the actors in the movie were people who clearly stood out. Like, that's why we offered them the parts. And they were all our first choices. Like, these were the people that were like, we want this person for this role. And they said yes. And like, nobody, we didn't have to go to like our second or third. Everybody took it, who we offered it to. And so Brittany plays Mel, who's the lead and protagonist in the story. And she, again, like she just, when she came in and read, she had a spark about her, kind of like that, they talk about that it factor or whatever. She had something that stood out. And she was also the only actress that cried in the audition, which wasn't necessary for the role. Like there was a sequence in the movie where she tries to get sympathy from the villain, from Jack.
Begs and pleads for mercy.
But she's doing it to manipulate them. She's trying to just get them out of the situation. Like she's not sincere. And so in the audition, when she was doing that part, she actually cried. And I was like, well, I mean, you got the emotional range clearly because you took it a step even further than it needed to go. Right. And then, yeah, she was like an immediate, like, yes, we like her for the role. For
I
sure.
do not see the second gentleman on any of the pictures, but could you tell us about the second gentleman that is on this? I do not see his picture.
Yeah, I don't know if he's on that particular thing. So he's got the smallest part, so that's probably why I don't have him on a highlight thing right there. But he did a great job too. He actually took the least amount of, I don't know, acting direction. Like he basically came into his part. But his name is Mikey, or I guess his professional name is Michael Delara. But he did a great job too. Again, he was one of those people like he had the smallest part, had the least amount of time on set, or actually in front of the cameras rolling, and so he would just sit around and just cheer everybody up and play guitar when he wasn't filming, and he'd come in and he knocked it out every time. Like I mean, my directing was usually like, just stand a little bit to the left. Can you lower that shoulder? It was never his performance. It was just like the technical blocking of it or whatever. But he did a great job too, and he just plays a nice neighbor in the story,
He's kind of seems like he's got a warm, friendly personality about him in general.
He is a very good-hearted and very positive person. Just
tell us about your crew. It's a limited, small crew.
Yeah, there were 5 people, I want to say. Let's see. We have the director of photography, who was fantastic, as a good friend of mine. His name is Ray.
Ray what?
Langridge.
Okay.
He's down in Florida right now, but he's a super good cinematographer.
Okay.
But he was a friend of mine before he took on that role. But yeah, he was there was Ray, then Waylon, who I worked on his film. He then was my first AD, so he was the one kind of managing the crew and cast and making sure everything stayed on point, and we kept to the schedule and all that stuff. So that was my friend Waylon. Then Harrison Chambers, who is the one who does all the construction work and set work, who now works on big movies. He's a friend of mine too. They're all friends of mine. That's why they all did it. But
right, that's
Harrison
my
friends,
did that. For favors, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was another friend of mine, Josh, who he had made a film that I helped out on as well, and he did sound for us. And now he's actually a published author. He moved on and is not actually doing film anymore. He's doing writing, but that's great for him.
Yeah.
So that's Josh, and then
your music.
Well, yes. Well, he wasn't on set, but I'll get to him in a second. And then the other on-set production person was Joel Neal, who is a producer, and he is just basically he's an independent filmmaker who, kind of like Ellie, just wants to see other people succeed too. Like he makes his own stuff, but he has like a huge investment in gear, and he's got all this experience. But he's a big do-it-yourself kind of guy. Like kind of get in there, kind of like again early Sam Raimi and stuff, where you're rigging strange concoctions to make the shot work and stuff. Using found items and stuff. But he came in and just basically brought all this experience and gear, and he's a producer on the film and everything. And we couldn't have done without him either. He was fantastic, and we're yeah.
So would you say that making an independent film that is worthy of awards does not take a gigantic cast or crew? In your experience with this film,
it doesn't take a gigantic one, but you do need people, because I will say, like, Carjack is clearly my most successful, but also my most polished short film I've made. But like I was saying earlier, I started out in the late 90s, early 2000s making short films, and I made 15, 20 films. But like none of those would I show someone.
Okay.
I made them, and like I like them, I enjoy them.
Yeah.
And I showed them to friends and family, but I would never say like, oh, this movie is success. Like this movie would be good to put into a festival or something. It was like, well, it's kind of silly.
Right.
Like I did something in it. So I made a lot of short films, but Carjack is the first one I ever felt like, okay, this movie is ready to be kind of unveiled to the world, kind of a thing. It wasn't just for myself; it was for actual like an audience to take in.
Right.
Yeah.
And you dedicated the film to.
Well, yeah. So I had written or I was trying to get something made for myself. I'd worked on other stuff while I was out in LA, and I wanted to make something for myself. And in the summer of 2016, my father unexpectedly died. He passed away. And almost at the exact same time, me and my girlfriend at the time found out we were pregnant. So it was like my dad passed and now I'm going to be a father, kind of almost at the exact same moment, which was kind of crazy. And so those two things, I was like, all right, I need to make something right now. Like, I just want to stop kind of waiting for an opportunity, and I'm just going to make something happen. And so I came up with the Carjack idea, wrote it, and then I think we took our tax refunds and we basically we created a crowdfunding campaign for it to raise money, but we had enough money just to make it with that money. Like, we needed that money for other things, but we basically fronted ourselves and we started shooting the movie while running the crowdfunding thing. And I was able to get that money back through the crowdfunding. But yeah, we just made it happen. That was kind of my whole thing, and that's dedicated to my dad. And because my dad was he was like, of all the people in my life, my dad was the one who really believed in me as a filmmaker since I was a kid. Like, he never doubted it. He'd always be like, well, when you're doing it, when you're making these big movies. And we'd always talk movies. And he's a huge part of the reason why I make movies, honestly, because I didn't go to film school. I went to Merrimack. I took a lot of film classes. But like, shoot, I don't know, from age 6, me and my dad, anytime we watched a movie, would sit down afterwards and like break it down to like every detail. We'd talk about what worked, what didn't, all these technical things, story stuff, all this stuff. And so we would just really deconstruct film, and after every single movie I ever watched. So like, I had this informal education, like pretty much my whole life on film, basically just having these in-depth conversations about movies. And he didn't have any training or anything. He was just a cinephile who loved movies.
Right. Is that a big deal that you said a couple times that you didn't go to film school? When you're out in LA, do they kind of like, does that help you with your credentials out there?
I mean, if you go to like one of the really big schools, if you maybe go to USC or UCLA or something and graduate from their film departments, that might have some weight. But honestly, film school has a lot of merit, but not because it's going to somehow catapult you into the industry because of the fact that you went to film school. What it is networking. You're basically paying to network with other people who are also trying to make it. And so then you go to school, you meet professors who work in the industry, you meet other students.
They can't teach creativity 101.
Well, and also filmmaking, I mean, to be honest, filmmaking is very much a networking industry. It's really, I mean, it's really cliche to say, it's like who you know, but like that is it, because so much money is being funneled into these projects that like no one wants to just take a chance on somebody they don't know. And so if you have somebody vouching for you, that always has the most weight, you know? So filmmaking is really about your relationships and connections to other people. So film school is, you go to school, you meet all these other filmmakers, and then you graduate potentially. And now this person has a gig over here, and they tell the filmmaker, hey, I know a guy who can do sound on your project. And then it all just kind of, you just kind of jump from things, from people you know. And then if one person takes off, then you might, get help up from that person or whatever.
Right.
So I would say, if you're going to film school, don't go there thinking, oh, my degree is going to now open all these doors for me. It's really just make sure you're actually like social and work with each other.
You know what? You are particularly special in my filmmaking career because of not particularly you yourself, but because growing up, going to high school together, one of the most influential people I got to meet, got to be around, was your sister. And your sister got me into wanting to do the one acts and wanting to do theater and wanting to be a thespian and wanting to do go on from there. And it really ignited the whole idea of creativity and theater and film. And I could really see how your dad has influenced both you and your sister tremendously with the careers that you both have chosen. And I mean, she's phenomenal and thinks that she's been in a creative mind. And I think that you equally are just as creative and just so many multifaceted different areas that you think you don't know a lot about, but you are just really good at. Do you think that you're going to pass those same skills that your dad did with you onto your own kids? You know, sitting and talking about stuff and the importance of film and the importance of how it changes minds about concepts or ideas or views, whether it's a gay, you know, seeing people, what they go through, or just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm glad that my sister had a positive impact on you and inspired you. She's a great person. But yeah, I mean, I don't think my dad ever like set out to try to I don't know, inspire creativity in us. He was a very supportive person. He was one of those people who would, you know, he wasn't negative. He was always optimistic, and he saw, I'm sure, we were his kids. He wanted to see us succeed, and he also just loved what we did. You know, he didn't critique us. It was like, you know, he was just into celebrating what we were doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, for my own kids, I cannot put into words how impressed I am with my 4-year-old. Like, the things she does blow my mind every day. Like, I think she's the coolest kid. I was like, are kids actually supposed to be this cool? Like, this funny, this clever?
Like let me do a Google search.
Yeah, it's
on
just
this.
so I think she's wonderful. And yeah, anytime she's super creative, she's always doing imaginative play and coming up with stories and stuff. And so yeah, I'm floored by it, and I tell her, and I'm always very supportive of that. So yeah, I mean, I would never be critical of my children. I'm somebody who would, in a way, follow my dad's footsteps, where I'm going to, you know, try to push them forward and up, and not try to, you know, diminish their spark, basically, or anything like that, for sure. And then with movie stuff, like, I mean, I love my wife, but I cannot watch a movie or show silently. Like, I'm not that guy. I mean, if I'm in a movie theater,
your poor wife.
yes. If I'm in a movie theater, I'm focused on the movie. I'm paying attention. Yeah. At home, I'm gonna say things like,
what are you gonna say? What do you mean?
Like, don't go in there.
No, not that kind of stuff.
Oh,
it's much
that's not
more
you?
critical. Not critical. It's much more craft, right? So like,
okay.
if something happens, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, they should have just wrote it so that this happens. So that
Oh
happens.
my goodness. Your
wow,
wife.
I mean, she's like that too. She enjoys that. I do feel like I probably annoy her more than I wish to. But yeah, no, I will always. But I mean, again, that's me and my dad. Me and my dad were doing that since I was a kid. So like, that's just part of it. Is I can't help but like express myself when I'm watching a story and what I like or don't like about it. And if it's something, if I'm watching something I love or that's impressing me, I will also jump out and be like, that was a super smart decision they made. Like,
Being a filmmaker and all the events that have gone on in the past year and a half, how has it inspired you? How has it lit a fire under you? How has it, you know, molded or made an impression on you about things that we either need to change or leaked into your creativity somehow? Take that question however you want.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the pandemic itself over the year and a half, that is not something I really think needs a whole lot of exploration. I feel like it's a traumatic experience that everyone had to, across the entire planet, had to go through. And like, I feel like trying to, like, I don't know, tell pandemic stories or it's stories about giant disease spread or anything. I think is kind of overdone. I mean, there's already been a number of those that have popped out so far. And I don't know if people really need a reminder of that stuff. I mean, we're still wearing masks sometimes, and like, things are still fresh enough that I don't know if that's really the right setting.
What about racial inequality?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole different story. I think that not just nationally, but globally, we're having a reckoning right now with how race has kind of been dealt with. And I mean, you could say it's been going on for a long time, but I think we've hit a flashpoint where it's more obvious than it's ever been, the problems that we're having, and the systemic racism and these kind of established things that most people didn't even realize were a problem, right? But I think there's been a lot of awakening in the last year. And in me too, like I I've had some very emotional epiphanies and reckonings in myself about what's been going on and what's happened. And like, cause I'm mixed. My dad was black, my mom's white. And I grew up in this melting pot of a family. Like we've had, like there are more mixed kids in my family than any other group.
Right.
Like, there's tons of us. And so like, it was never, race was never a thing for me growing up. And I was lucky. I grew up in a very privileged situation where I was like, I had all these different races and groups, and no one brought it up. Nobody had problems. Nobody was in danger or being oppressed, you know, in a major way that anybody ever talked about. Like, it was like everybody, the world worked fine. Right.
Right.
And so I had this view of the world that like, well, you know, there's a lot of race stuff, but I grew up in a situation where it was clearly not an issue. So like maybe people are just taking it the wrong way and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like over the last couple of years and then since last summer, I realized how kind of that was just my perspective, even though I'm not just a, you know, straight up white person, or I'm not just my experience was very unique, and that is not the way the rest of the world is working and has worked. And so I've just become much more aware of the injustices and suffering of so many more people, and that things aren't necessarily as minimized as I thought they were. I thought I didn't think things were as widespread as they were necessarily for a long time, and now I have a very different view.
You know, film changes so many opinions, and I know that you're going to have to probably get going here soon, and I just wanted to make sure to ask you two last questions, and I won't hijack this interview no more, Matt. But how are you going to use your platform as a filmmaker, knowing that film does change minds, give perspectives and insights to help equally make it as easier for your own daughters to either have that awareness and or be treated with the same level of dignity and respect? Well,
I want to credit my wife on this. So when I was working on screenplays almost a decade ago, even when I was first writing in high school and stuff, and I always liked female protagonists. It was just a thing. I liked like a tough female protagonist, probably because I was a big Cameron fan. I liked, you know, Terminator and Aliens and stuff with Ripley and Sarah Connor. So I had a lot of stuff where I would do that. And so when I was writing as, you know, an adult, my girlfriend would comment about, you know, if the female roles were either too generic or too underdeveloped or whatever, she'd make comment about it. Or if there weren't enough female characters, like if it was like one female character and a whole bunch of guys. And so she never like criticized it. She was like, but you know, there's only like one lady in here, right? And I'd be like, oh, you're right. And so she just kind of reminded me of some things. And so I started actually reevaluating my writing a long time ago. And so I would choose to change dynamics. I'd go in my head and be like, okay, if this character were a woman instead of a man, would it change it this way or that way? Like, would it hurt the story, you know, help it? Right. And so I started just kind of playing with those ideas. And then I also would mix race into that, which normally when I'm writing something, I don't see characters as particular ethnic groups. Like I'll be like, you know, I won't even write that normally in a screenplay, when you describe a character, you might throw in African-American, Caucasian, Mexican, whatever you're trying to do.
Right.
But unless that role specifically needed to be that, like for the story, I would never write in what that was. It just be kind of cast it however, you know, you would think, because whatever works. Because for me, it didn't matter. It doesn't matter what it was. But over the last couple of years, with the way things have been going, I now think of it much more in my head, and I really want to create roles that are a little more. Sorry, the little bug.
Yeah, I know.
I saw him too.
It's been around for a couple podcasts.
But I would like to elevate people of color and women characters more in my stories, which again, I've been doing it for a while, but like I think about it more often. Sometimes it doesn't work. Like I had a screenplay that's super dear to my heart, and every time I would think about changing the lead character's race, it would create this like domino effect. I'm like, well, if they're African American, what is this saying about him? Like, because of the story I'm telling,
right?
He's kind of not a despicable character, but he's like not the best person.
Right.
And so I'm like, am I building in the stereotypes here? Or if I change it to this? And so like I go through this big, long, like kind of devil's advocate thing in my head if I ever think about specifying the race of a character. Like, am I doing a disservice? Am I doing more harm by changing it to that? Not just, because if the character is kind of a messed up character, like I don't want to act like that's how I see, a particular group or anything like that.
All right. My last question. If you were to speak to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself right now in regards to filmmaking or that interest that you had?
It's a hard.
Save your money, probably.
Well, I mean,
start crowdfunding then, huh?
No, I mean the tricky thing. I mean, I guess I was lucky when I was younger. I knew I wanted to make movies from about 8 years old. Like I wanted to, at first when I learned how to write, I wanted to be an author. I just love telling stories. And so then when I was about 8, I realized, well, I could tell the stories, but I love movies and I could tell them visually as well.
Right.
And so I became infatuated with Spielberg. And I read, like, even at 8, I was checking out Spielberg's biography and stuff. And like, I love movies so much.
Red flag that 8-year-old
So
library account.
I wanted to be a filmmaker from a very young age. And so, and I never faltered from that. Like I've always had this very clear plan or desire and a passion for it. And so I never really had doubts, if that makes sense. I never sat around and wasn't sure what I should do. So it's a little tricky talking, like, trying to think about what I tell myself. But I mean, to be honest, it's hard. I mean, making movies is one of the hardest art forms you can do because you can't easily do it by yourself. I mean, you can literally do it by yourself.
A lot of things too is learn from wisdom. So like, it's kind of like all the failures and stuff, setbacks I've had in my life have actually helped me progress and be a better
I agree with
creator.
That. Yeah, I agree with that 100% too. I mean, yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have issues. But yeah, you don't have to let those things be stumbling blocks that like stop you from that, desire, that passion. If you really want to tell stories, then keep telling stories. Like I'm 41 years old. I'm not selling out movie theaters or anything yet, but I haven't ever doubted that I was going to keep making movies. And I'm going to keep making them for as long as I physically can. So, I mean, don't let roadblocks discourage you too much. I mean, you can have your moments of doubt, but like keep pushing through and you'll have more opportunities and all that. But really, if any young filmmaker, it's like, for what I would say to them now is, like I said earlier, filmmaking is not really a solo art form. You really need other people. If you want to make something good, you're going to need actors. You're going to need crew. You're going to need help. And so like really learn to work with other people, even if you want to be a director and you maybe even write your own stuff, like don't go in thinking, well, it's my story, so just do it this way. And that like, I know the best cause I'm the director or whatever. Right. Like that's not how good movies or good stories are told. I mean, filmmaking is really a super collaborative process. And so like on my sets, I've always been super open. Like if somebody has an idea, like just tell me the idea. And like, I might be like, that's a great idea. Or I might be like, yeah, well, that's not going to work.
That's how I am as well.
But you should be open to everybody else's voices who are working on the project. They're giving you their time. Even if you're paying them, they're still giving you their time, their talent, their, skill. So like be open to it. Now, if if you're on a Hollywood movie and there are 1,000 people working for you, like as a director, you can't listen to everybody. Like you can't take in every single idea that somebody's throwing. It's just not going to work. But when you're starting out, when you're doing small, when you're doing independent stuff, just be good at communicating. Talk to people and talk to your actors a lot. Talk to your director of photography or your cinematographer a lot, or whoever's working with you. Like try to be clear about what you're trying to do, but also be open to ideas because things are gonna get better when you get different perspectives. Usually, if somebody had I'm a writer director. I've only ever directed stuff that I've written. Like it's my idea from beginning to end, kind of a thing. But like there are so many good ideas that I've added or taken, things that didn't work that I changed because of other, people working on the movies perspectives where they'd be like, maybe this doesn't work so great. And you're like, you know what, you're right. That doesn't work at all.
How much time do you have to live here soon? Or
I can, as long as you guys want.
Okay.
I mean, my kids are in bed already, so
So coming back to St. Louis, you don't have to explain why you came back because it could be a personal thing. So that's fine. But St. Louis as a film industry, what's your thoughts? You think this is a good platform? You think there's good people here? I mean, what's your thoughts on St. Louis? I mean, are you optimistic on coming back and creating films here?
Well, I'm probably not going to stay here. This is kind of it's kind of a convoluted thing. It's not off the topic. It's just basically California is super expensive.
Yeah.
I now have a family of 4. I have a brand new baby plus my 4-year-old. We want to have a house. We want to have a yard for the kids. Unaffordable in LA. So we're moving back to the Midwest so we can get that stuff for the family. I'm still planning on making movies, and it might be I might do some stuff down here, but we're trying to get to Minneapolis. We're trying to buy a house in Minneapolis, though that market's really hot. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. Good luck.
So the idea is to be up in Minneapolis, but I mean it's like a 9-hour drive, and I do know a decent amount of film people here. So it's possible there'll be either projects up there I invite people up to, or I come down and shoot some stuff here and there. We'll see. I'm not sure. But as for a film market or a film industry, I think it's grown up a lot since I was doing it here.
I agree with that statement.
Because it was pretty tight knit back in that early 2000s period.
Yes.
And I pretty much knew everybody was making movies at that point.
Right.
And a lot of them have kind of moved on or kind of do it a little more inconsistently now. But I think the trick is, when, at least from when I was here, most of the people who really were passionate about it left. And that was kind of what happened, like why I left eventually too, was that the people who were really into it would run off to one of the coasts. You know, they were going to New York or LA to go try to make it big. And so the talent pool would shift dramatically. Like, you know, people would graduate and then all of a sudden there was a lot less people for a second that were doing certain things. But now I do think it's larger. There's a lot more people doing it. I think there's more opportunity here now. And so people aren't necessarily just running off as soon as they can to go somewhere else. I think some people are sticking around and really trying to make good stuff here. So I'm optimistic about what St. Louis can do. Yeah.
Cool. And so what dates are the film showcase?
I don't know it right off. I don't know it right off the bat. It's late July. I think it's like July 21st to 25th, but I don't know for sure. It's late July though.
And it's in person, right? So
no, they couldn't get a theater.
Okay.
So it's just going to be virtual again this year. They were virtual last year. They're going to do it virtual again this year.
I see.
The International Film Festival in November, I would assume, is going to be in person this year. I mean, I haven't heard if they're going to do that or not, but yeah, this is going to be virtual again.
Do you think that's the route to go if you make a short film through the filmmaking film fest circuit? Like, is that still? I mean,
yeah, I feel like I kind of got screwed. So
yeah.
So I made this movie. It took me 3.5 years to get it finished, and so I threw in the film festivals, and then the pandemic hit. Like I remember around about the same time, and so everything went virtual. And the thing is, right now the virtual stuff is not really worth it to run the film circuit, because
isn't that part of the experience in St. Louis is getting to go to that?
Well, I mean,
part of the whole experience.
The whole point of a film festival is for your film to get shown in front of an audience, to get an audience's reaction, but also for them to then word of mouth your film. So it's to get it in front of an audience. Then it's to get it in front of people who make movies. So like producers, agents, talent, big name actors. Just to get it out there so that, or to win awards and recognition. But it's all about an in-person experience. Like you're trying to show it to all these people.
Right.
And online, theoretically, it's a bigger audience. Because you're like, well, it's online. Anybody in the world can watch it.
Right.
But nobody wants to pay money to watch stuff on like their computer much.
Right.
I mean, they're going to subscribe to like, Netflix or whatever, streaming services where they get a whole bunch of content.
Yeah.
But to take a chance on all these like nobody filmmakers or like whatever, like people just don't rush to do that. And so pretty much all the festivals that I was a part of, I mean, I'm very honored to be in those festivals, but like they kind of put it on you to create the audience. Like you go find your friends and family to watch it. And you're like, that's fine. But then people just kind of snipe, like they just kind of pick that. Like, so I'm pretty sure most of my friends and family watch my movie. And everybody else's filmmaker friends, they watch their movie, but they didn't like watch everybody's movie. They didn't watch like a lot of stuff. So you're really not getting that audience.
You know
at
what's
all.
fantastic about St. Louis's International Film Festival is that they offer not just one venue, not just one day, but multiple venues going on at the exact same time for over a week.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go and you can buy a pass and you can just go venue hopping if you want all week and have a good time all day and all night doing that shit. And I just think it's an incredible experience to be able to, as a filmmaker, to see people enjoying and appreciate, and you're like, yes, people are getting into this shit. This is kind of like why I do this shit, you know. And it's a like a selfish joy, I guess, but it's neat to see people want to see your stuff and get excited about your stuff and clap or whatever at the end.
Well, that's true. And I mean, if you're telling stories, you're not telling stories to tell to yourself. Like if you're telling stories, the whole idea is you're trying to tell it to an audience. So that's the nature of storytelling, is you're trying to share an experience with other people. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the root of storytelling. So if you make a movie, the idea is that you're going to show it to people and they will have a reaction, and hopefully it's a good reaction to what you're telling them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the filmmaker, of course, is going to feel good if everybody's clapping and enjoying their movie. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it. And that's what the film festival circuit is supposed to be. It's supposed to be showing it to people, you know, like I said. And there's also networking. Like you go to a film festival, your short's in, but then you see another filmmaker made a movie that you really liked. So you introduce yourself and you guys become friends or have some kind of relationship. And then that could play out somewhere down the road, you know, with another project or something.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. So I basically have had a year of my stuff being online, but I've never met anybody. I've never had a live audience watch my stuff. So yeah, I mean, yes, I think the festival circuit is important. I feel like, unfortunately, the pandemic kind of messed up this last year and some change for being what I hoped it would be or whatever.
Right.
You don't have friends that come over and watch it? Like you haven't shown like your...
No, I mean, I've just shared the link with people. People have watched it in their own houses and been like, "Oh, it's really good." I'm like, "Thanks," but I haven't had people over to have like a little screening or anything like that in my house. So I've actually not seen anybody but my wife, and yeah, I think just my wife watched it. It's kind of sad now that you say that.
Of all the things of filmmaking, is directing your favorite thing, or do you?
You slip into other roles just as easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a writer director. Like I said, I started off thinking I was going to be an author when I was a little kid, and it rolled over. But yeah, directing is my passion. Like I love directing. I also love writing, but like I would never be content just being a writer. Like just giving my stories to people and letting them make it would never fulfill me in the same way.
Cross training
Right.
is really big in your drive with your career as far as filmmaking to any capacity. Like getting to be able to work with a camera, getting to be able to do script writing, learning how to do this and that.
If you want to direct, you should have an understanding of all the other roles, which usually easiest if you've done them. Mm-hmm. But I haven't done everything. But yeah, experience in general is going to help you be better. If you know what the camera people are doing, that helps. If you know what the actors are going through, which I used to act too. So like the more you have a feel for the different roles and positions, it will make you a better director. So, I mean, a director, you're in a way kind of a manager kind of a thing. So you're managing all these different things. And then the assistant director is the one who's going to be your vocal, like actually tell everybody what to do. But you have to understand how to keep all the parts moving the right way. Right. If something's not working, then it'll, break down all the other stuff. So you have to keep all that in mind while you're directing too.
I've noticed that in my own personal experience, that being a director, it kind of is like it's like a big giant wheel. As a director, if I am the one that wrote it, or if I'm good at writing, that it enables me to be able to see things or make a shot list if I'm a DP, or better, once you know how these different roles operate, then it almost helps in those other different areas just as equally, knowing that whether you're a director or you're the DP, you know how to call out better shot. You have a better visual as you're really listening or reading the story, or a better actor. Yeah,
again, it's collaborative. So the more you understand of what's all happening, the easier you can work with other people. Like, where that this person's working on this thing, and I know how to, help them with that, or I know what they're going through, so I can make it easier for them, or,
right.
give
I think
them
that's why I've
pointers or something.
admired you as a filmmaker. I've always said that when someone thinks that they know everything about a particular subject, whatever that is, they're actually closing their own doors on opportunities versus if you remain open-minded and remain teachable, no matter how good people tell you you are, it is amazing how just that much more you learn and you retain, you absorb, and it opens up even more doors.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
Well, great. Well, we're excited to see this film at the film festival. You have any other questions you would?
what color socks you wear? No.
No. Well, I was interested in the kind of that we talked about the beginning of your career, then we jumped ahead to the carjacking. But like, what other sets? Because I thought the Big Brother thing was very interesting that you've worked on in LA that you can kind of share with people. Because I've never like been out there, but I've never worked in that kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the highest profile thing. A lot of stuff is short films and such. I can't say there's anything that people have probably seen or know anything about. Yeah, I mean that was just happened to be one of the things. I mean I've been on a lot of sets or on a lot of like, I was like on a music video, like a professional music video shoot in a big warehouse and stuff. I mean I've seen a lot of stuff. I've been places. I've been on Warner Brothers lot and CBS's lot and Paramount and Sony and Fox. Like I've been to places. But I don't have like fun stories. I wish I did. I wish I could be like,
Just
and then there's this one time. Yeah, I've had experiences. I had it. If you like making movies, LA is still like, I mean, it's not this perfect place where like all dreams come true and like it's, movies are so fancy and awesome. Like it's a grittier, darker place, but it's still the mecca of movies. Like, so if you go there, like you can't, and you love making movies, it's still awesome. I mean, when you walk into a place that, movies from 100 years ago were shot at, or like you touch something, was in this movie or whatever. Like it's, I mean, so,
you definitely got to bring your A game to a place like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. LA is crazy competitive, like crazy hard to meet people and work with people without, again, knowing certain people. But like, I mean, one of my favorite things about LA is that like, I love Die Hard. Die Hard's one of my favorite movies. And so Fox, the building in Die Hard, Nakatomi Tower, is just an office building at Fox, like that they made at Fox Studios. So like I've been there and like awesome. Stood in the like where the
the body drops off of the
I've stood there. And like so that stuff is just great. Like that's to awesome. Be in that place and know like I'm in like where they made this great movie that I love so much and I've loved for so long. So like that stuff's awesome.
And the dead body hit right there on that cop's car.
Also messes with you sometimes though, because you'll start to like watch movies differently. Like, oh yeah, that's I know exactly where that little place is, or I know where that is. Right. Like that's not in New York, that's in LA.
Do you think you'll ever go back?
I hope to. Yeah. Like when I moved to LA, I had been to LA a number of times before I moved. And the first time I'd gone, I was 15. My parents, we did a big family trip out there because I loved movies so much and I wanted to go out there. And it really changed my view of LA because as a 15-year-old who had wanted to make movies my whole life, it was like I thought it was going to be like this, again, kind of the glitzy, glamorous, wonderful place of LA. And I got there and I was watching people like prostitutes being arrested in alleys, and like it was a very different
You go Hollywood experience. Boulevard and there's just homeless people.
It was like, oh wait, this is not a perfect place. And so it changed my perspective. So when I moved out there, I already knew what I was getting into. I wasn't going out with like, oh, this is going to be a street, the streets are paved in gold and my dreams will be realized. Right. But being out there almost 9 years, I grew very fond of it. Like there are shortcomings definitely, but there are things about it that I absolutely love. And so even my wife too, when we first moved out there, she's like, what did you get me into? But now she's also eager to potentially move back if we can. So my goal is make sure our family's taken care of here in the Midwest for a while, keep plugging away at movies, and hopefully things work in a way that we will then be able to afford real estate at some point in the future in LA and
buy up Steven Spielberg.
Well, I'm not expecting to be able to buy, $10 million house or anything, but if I can get just, a traditional house, that'd be fine. But move back out, either move out there as a family, like permanently, or at least have some kind of like a condo or something that I can kind of we can joint move, like take trips out there for a while and come back and such.
And my final question is what's next? What's the next project in that brand of yours?
Well, I kind of want to be done with shorts. I've made a lot of shorts in my life. I would like to make a feature film. And so I have an idea for a micro budget. So it's like a $500,000 or less budget sci-fi movie feature film that I want to make. So I'm working on getting that figured out. And then I might make one last short before I make that. And if I do, it's a science fiction short that I would use to help draw attention to me making the feature, basically. Kind of like a little, not like, it's a totally different story, but like kind of a calling card or test for the feature film kind of a thing.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We did an hour and 20 minutes. So that went quick.
I did. I was
Quick,
like,
yeah.
I had to get up and look at the camera, and I went, it timed out quick. We had to start it up
very
again.
interesting, and have to have you come back. And
Yeah, anytime.
yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the short. Anything you want to say here?
I just think it's an absolute spectacular short film, and all those that can should be able to get out and look up the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase and check it out on the virtual one when time comes available. And thanks to letting me be a part of an incredible cast and crew and experience of being a part of your creativity and madness. You guys are awesome and spectacular, and you guys deserve every award that you possibly could get.
Oh, thank you.
She puts it on thick. So yeah.
It doesn't go over with him.
No, it's fine.
I never get my way with him. Yeah. But yeah. Uh-huh.
But thank you for watching. Check out our sponsor, 420brandclothing.com. Use the pod 420 and get 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Ellie, for bringing your guests today. And this is
Mr. Michael Winningham, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Oh, here we go. Get that.
Woo! That's
So-
our precursor for the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase. There it is. We've already won it.
So definitely check them out. Carjacked and at the St. Louis Film Festival. So thank you for watching. This is the Daily Dirt with Dustin Diggs.
Go beast.
420 brand clothing.